uh-oh, I hope he doesn't call me out, but thanks for calling
Carla
me.
just
Aggie land behind him.
texted that we're starting.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, and they've just rung the bell. Everybody,
Welcome to the Rotary Club of Fort Worth.
everybody mute yourself.
Welcome,
on
everyone.
Zoom.
Thank you so much for being here. It's so great to see everyone. It's feeling the energy of seeing more and more people in person. So thank you all so much for being here. It's my pleasure to get us started to welcome Dr. Tim Brewster, who is joining us virtually. And we're going to spotlight him so everyone can see him. He is the senior pastor for the First United Methodist Church of Fort Worth, followed by our national anthem. Dr. Brewster.
Now let's pray. Oh God, our help and our hope in every time of life, we bow before you, acknowledging our distress in the face of the pandemic ravaging our world today and the deep divisions that are ravaging our body politic. Remind us of your presence with us in all times and places, and enable us to know that you do not desert us, but in times of need stand even closer than before. We pray for wisdom for our leaders and representatives, especially during this time of transition. May each one of us in this club be a part of the ongoing task of forming a more perfect union. As you give us opportunity to serve those in need, grant also generous spirits and the wise and efficient use of our abilities in offering aid. Oh God, even in this difficult time, we have much for which to be grateful. We give thanks for family, friends, the many people whose work provides us with what we need. Remind us, oh God, that your love will see us through every darkness, every doubt, every desolation, for you are our hope and our strength. Amen.
Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Brewster, for that poignant invocation. And just a quick note, how many of you out there, either online or in the room, went to the Visit Fort Worth breakfast this morning? Anybody? Show of hands. Wow, what an incredible topic. I don't know if some of you, I'm sure, will never forget the speech by Fort Worth living legend Opal Lee, and I think her message was very apropos for today's topic, and also definitely illustrates the importance of the four-way test, and those are the things that we think, we say, or we do. So if you online and people in person, if you'll say it with me. Number one, is it the truth? Number two, is it fair to all concerned? Number three, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And number four, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you very much. Now it's my pleasure to welcome Julie Wilson in person. She's the founder of the Reasons Group, LLC, and she will give a warm welcome to all of our visiting Rotarians, both in person and everyone out there watching online. Julie?
Hello. Welcome. I'd like it to be a really warm welcome, but it's pretty chilly outside today. I'm ready for spring. I don't know about all of you, but I don't think the Puxatawny Phil is agreeing with that. So we're glad that you're here, both in person, braving the chilliness, and there on Zoom. Thank you so much for being here. All our visiting Rotarians and guests. We have several today. Brandon Allen is a guest of our speaker, Dr. John Barnett. If you just raise your hand, let us see you. Thank you. Beth Pulliam, a guest of Darren George. Thank you. Dee Jennings, a guest of Andy Taft. Esther Tucker, a guest of Carla Capua. You are, Esters. Gracie Bolner and Jared McFadden from Rotaract. Thank you. And Jim Austin brought several guests today. Chris Nettles, Debbie Garrett-Smith, Deborah Peoples, and Sajade Miller. Thank you all for being here. And again, our guests on Zoom, thank you for being here too. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. Now, for the moment that most of you have been waiting for, and I have to preface this by saying, only a truly bold newscaster would invite a community leader to sit next to him at his table, knowing he's giving the newscast. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the bold, the talented, the inimitable Andy Taft.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Oh, wait, that's the wrong way. Sorry. Okay. Super glad to be here. Great to see everybody. I feel about as welcome as a Democrat pollster knocking out the door at Mar-a-Lago. Wow. So now for the news. Gonna make sure that this works. All right. Jeff Bezos announced that he is stepping down as the CEO of Amazon, and he'll become the company's executive chair. Now, the question is, what kind of executive chair will the richest man in the world be? I'm guessing this kind. GameStop stock prices soared and then crashed this week because of online investors short squeezing the stock. Speaking of short squeezes, that reminds me of another item out of the zoo news. What do you get when you cross an elephant with a giraffe? That is a short squeeze. All right. Donald Trump's legal team quit with just 2 weeks to go before a Senate impeachment trial, and true to his form, he's recruited a true patriot to defend him. Denny Crane. The FBI has revealed that Stephen Brandenburg, the Wisconsin pharmacist who destroyed a batch of coronavirus vaccines, this man believes that the world is flat and the sky isn't real, which begs me to ask the question, how did this man become a pharmacist and not a congressman? Thank you. Thank you, Congressman. The U.S. Navy has announced plans to improve diversity within the naval ranks. According to a recent census, 67% of all sailors self-identify as white. According to a brand new census taken just after the 15-0 loss in their annual football match, 90% of all sailors now self-identify as Army. That's not good for a town with a naval air station. All right. Mike Lindell, the embattled election conspiracy theorist and founder of MyPillow, is now drawing competitors who are hoping to capitalize on his fall from grace. Not to be outmaneuvered, Lindell has changed the focus of his company to capitalize on the still fervent Trump base. His new company is MyPillow Sham. A pillow sham is a thing you put over a pillow. It's like a little double meaning. Okay. I thought that was the highlight. So, the rest is going to be great. All right. The FBI has reported that 2 more DFW realtors have been arrested in connection with the January 6th insurgency at the U.S. Capitol, And they would have gotten away with it, but being Dallas realtors, they couldn't let a potential house listing go by. Okay. This week, a man in Idaho won the lottery for the 6th time, which sounds kind of suspicious because you win the lottery once and you leave Idaho. Okay. And finally, QAnon conspiracy believers continue to desperately search for the elite group of deep state blood-leeching pedophiles. Meanwhile, a group out there that believes that ingesting live bacterial cultures is good for you. They have found their holy grail right here in Fort Worth. DAnon. Really? Wait a minute, think about it. Oh, wow. You might laugh in the car. No. Okay, so I will say now that the Super Bowl is this weekend, so enjoy watching Tom Brady lead the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tom is a polarizing figure in the NFL. On one hand, he has 5 Super Bowl rings, and on the other hand, well, he's only got 1. So the sky Saturday will be clear. The Sunday temperatures will be in the 70s, in the 60s. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, Andy. On behalf of the Rotary Club, we'd like to apologize to the Army, Navy, and the Idaho Convention and Visitors Bureau for that newscast. It is now my pleasure to welcome Blake Moorman, Secretary and Acting Director of Sales and Marketing for the Fort Worth Convention Center, for a second reading and a vote. Blake?
Thank you, President Carlo. So yes, we have 1 second reading today. The following proposed member was submitted during the January 29, 2021 program. If no objections are received through the voting process, then a proposed member will be accepted into our club. Her name is Miss Lisa Brown. She's a transfer from the Arlington Rotary Club. She's an interim principal gift officer for Texas Health Resources Foundation. Proposer, Carlo Capua. I move her election subject to attending the new Rotary information section.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, now here's what we'll do. Online, you should be able to see a poll. This is for Lisa Brown. We'll give you 10 seconds to vote yes, no, or abstain. We'll close in 4. You can see the poll. Close in 4, 3, 2, 1. And polling is ended. We'll share results. And congratulations to Lisa Brown, the newest member of our Rotary Club. But Blake, back to you.
All right, thank you, President Carlo. Yes, welcome, Lisa, and we're glad you decided to move west and come and join the Rotary Club of Fort Worth.
Thank you, Blake. And welcome, Lisa. Again, great to have you. All right, it's time for our committee spotlights. We have an international committee doing great work as we push unpause from COVID. So here to give you a brief description of his committee. And if you're interested in joining, we have maybe a trip happening next year I won't spoil it, but we could have something really exciting happening once we're able to travel a little bit more. But please help me welcome Mr. Derek Moffett. He is the principal and financial advisor for Moffett Financial Strategies. Derek?
Thank you. I just hope we don't have a poll whether you like my announcement or not. A few years ago, I was talking to a friend of mine who owned a business that manufactures products around the world, and he spends much of his time traveling, visiting the plants, of course, that he works with. And he told me that he was building a new office in the mid-cities areas and says, you know, Derek, I think I ought to join the Chamber of Commerce. I said, Randy, that's an excellent idea, but you also ought to consider joining Rotary. I said, Rotary is an international organization, and I imagine some of those plant manufacturers and owners and leaders that you work with are probably Rotarians. And as a Rotarian, you'll have an instant connection with them, a set of shared values on which to build your relationship with. And it's really true. If you look at Rotary.org, Rotary is an international organization of 1.2 million members, 35,000 clubs in over 200 countries. So across the globe, our fellow Rotarian members work to promote peace, to fight disease, provide clean water, save mothers and children, support education, and grow local economies. Our club has participated in Rotary's international mission in various ways. In the past, we've supported education by building libraries. We've supported mothers and children by providing wheelchairs and even grown local economies by creating a wheelchair repair business in Africa. By joining the Rotary International Committee, you'll discover an excellent way to partner with our Rotary Club and Rotary International in service above self at a global level. Our next meeting will be Friday, February 12th, following Rotary's Friday meeting. In this meeting, we're going to discuss and create our vision for the future. And one of the questions we'll consider before the trip in the next year is how we can serve the local international committee here in Fort Worth. With travel being difficult, it's tough to travel these days with COVID, but we have a large, abundant international population here in the Fort Worth community. And so we'll look at ways that we might be able to partner and serve that group here locally. This April, the Fort Worth Rotary Club will focus on International Month. We'll display all of our flags that we've accumulated from around the world. We'll share with you some of the things our club has done in the past and the international realm, and we'll also discuss opportunities that will be coming up in the future. On Friday, April 9th, Ms. Mallory Martin from the International Justice Mission will be here to share with us what IJM is doing to fight human trafficking and slavery around the world. And I promise you, you don't want to miss that opportunity. So if you participated in the Rotary International Committee in the past, if your business or work puts you in contact with international community here locally or abroad, or if you just like international food, I'd like to invite you to join the International Committee. We'll be having our first meeting of the year next Friday following the Rotary meeting here at the Fort Worth Club. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. Thank you, Derek. Thank you for all the work that you've done to rebuild that committee. Now it's time to spotlight a few of our fellow Rotarian members. We have both of them in person. We'll start with Mr. Steve Kessler. He's the Vice President and Financial Consultant of Fidelity Investments. He's been a member since 2013. And we like to do this spotlight every once in a while, just so you can remember people, what they do, because remember, at its heart, Rotary is a business club focused on service. So if you hear in any of these spotlights something your business may need or you personally may need, please think of supporting a Rotarian first. Steve?
Thank you, Carlo. I can always use business, so I appreciate those words. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Steve Kessler, and I joined Rotary in 2013, as Carlo said. My father was a longtime Rotarian, and some of you may remember him speaking a few years back. I knew he was a Rotarian for all those years. I just didn't know what Rotary was. And so when I was talking with Tran Trong as he was retiring, he would always request a meeting on Fridays because he was going to be coming downtown anyway, and then he was going to go to Rotary. So I showed him my interest in the club, talked to him about my dad. He invited me to a meeting, and once I found out what Rotary was about, it was a no-brainer. I wanted to join. So thank you again, Tran. I think you're always out there in the video part of the meetings, and appreciate you introducing me to this incredible club and its amazing membership. Before COVID, when I wasn't working at Fidelity down the street at West 7th, I was spending time with my family. My wife, Kathy, and I live in Alito, where we're raising our son. He's a junior in high school. We also have 2 kids and 2 grandkids that live locally that we get to see quite often. Since COVID, I've been working more from home, driving less in rush hour, playing a little bit more golf, and looking for my ball, which I can now hit further than my eyes can see, and rarely in the direction it's intended. Some interesting facts about me to wrap up, stay within my time. I lived in Montreal when I was in 8th grade, where I learned to play ice hockey. I have 2 aerospace engineering degrees from Georgia Tech, and I've never worked as an engineer. I've worked at Fidelity for 22 years. I played drums, and I was born in Dallas, but got to Fort Worth as quick as I could.
Great job, Steve. So apparently, if you need your money invested, a space shuttle built, or a drummer for your band, you know who to call. Thanks, Steve, a man of many talents. All right, and now to round us out, I'd like to introduce past President Zem Neil, who is here with us in person. Zem was one of the very first female presidents of our club. She is a living legend here for Rotary. She is the president and CEO, retired Campfire, Texas, and she's been a member since January of 1988 for 33 years. Zem, it's great to have you here.
Thank you, Carlo. I have told Carlo this privately, but I think it's absolutely appropriate to tell him at a club meeting publicly what a great job he's doing. Everybody agree? Yeah. I really appreciate being asked to do this. I had not seen a member spotlight before. So Bob Mitchell offered to coach me. And well, as I understand it, I have 10 minutes. Yeah, but seriously, when and why did I become a Rotarian? As Carlos said, 1988, which is many, many years ago. Time really does go by and you don't realize that 33 years later. But why is important because I think the why is the reason I did become a Rotarian, but it's also the reason I remain a Rotarian. And I think those are things you have to revisit from time to time. I will tell you there are 3 reasons. One, the history and traditions of this club always impressed me. About 110, 111 years ago, some leaders in Fort Worth began this club. And so the second reason is because of them. If you look back at the past membership of this organization, you realize how involved, how respected those who went before us, how respected they were. So I appreciate that. And then last but not least, the 4-way test. And I really appreciate Carlos lifting that up for us on a weekly basis. I think it's a measuring stick we could use in a lot of places as it was intended. So that's when and why. I appreciated the invitation to do this because actually the questions that Sean emailed me were thought-provoking. So extravagances, I'm not very extravagant, I learned, as I tried to put some things on paper. And so in addition to that, it made me think about how much I am enjoying retirement. The flexibility of time is just amazing. I worked for Campfire and I was the CEO for 37 years, followed by my best friend, Ann Sheets, who served in that role for 5 years, and now she too is retired. So I think she had all the fun that she could take after 44 years or something like that. Campfire is a wonderful organization for young people, and it has really changed over time. But the flexibility of time in retirement is a real gift. So today, what I want to tell you is because of the questions that I was provided, I am going, and this is advice from Bob Mitchell. He said to tell you that I'm going to trade in word games on my iPad for a trip to Las Vegas. So there you go. There's an extravagance that's exciting. And I will tell you that I'm fortunate enough to be one of the few people probably in this room who have had their second COVID shot. It was this week, and yes. So when you get the chance, be sure you do. But believe them, at 24 hours after, you're not going to feel very well. So yes, and they mean that. So this is the first time I've really felt better after taking the shot on Wednesday. But at any rate, these questions remind me to value and be thankful for every day and to enjoy and make the most of the time, because time is a gift. And as the old saying goes, that's why they call it the present. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Zem. Inspiring as always. You know, I was watching the comments on Zoom as you were speaking, Zem, and we got lots of wonderfully nice comments to you. One in particular I'd like to mention is from the president of the Fort Worth chapter of the NAACP, Ms. Estella Williams, and she said, the 4-way test should be a universal model. So thank you, Estella, and thank you, Zem, for everything you continue to do for the community. All right, now it is that time to introduce our speaker. So it's my pleasure to welcome our chairman of the day, Jim Austin. He's the president of CEO of the Austin Company and Jim Austin Online, and we've got a great one for you today. So please help me in welcoming Mr. Jim Austin Online.
sure my pleasure to be here. My wife requires when I leave the house that I have my mask on. So I will remove it now because she's watching me on Zoom. So, hey, honey. Hey, I moved to Fort Worth 44 years ago, March 4th, and came here to run American Express. Fell in love with Fort Worth and decided to stay. So I've been an entrepreneur for 40 years. So it's a good thing that I joined Rotary. And it's one of the things that I decided to stay with after I left American Express. No one was to pay my dues but me. So it's a great organization, and your membership is so awesome. So I just want to tell you the Visit Fort Worth annual meeting was really great this morning. So I've started a new business of collecting cell phone chargers. I was talking to the guy at the Omni that's over all lost items. And I said, hey man, we're collecting cell phone chargers. And he said, look, I got a box of them on my desk. So I'm announcing I'm starting a new business to raise cell phone chargers. So Carlo, there's a box over there on my desk of cell phone chargers. So we will make that happen. Go to JPS, and it's got JPS's name on it. But I want to wish all of you a happy Black History Month. Today we honored Opal Lee, just a real hero in what she's done on a national standpoint of trying to make Juneteenth a national holiday. But my wife and I are the founders of the National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum, and we have a bunch of events going on to celebrate Black History Month. This meeting today kicks off our agenda of activities that we're doing. Why should we have an African American museum? We're also going to be celebrating prostate awareness on February the 13th. I encourage you to go out and get your prostate checked. Commissioner Roy Brooks has been doing that for about 10 years. Also, we're doing some Valentine's Day celebration with three concerts at the warehouse. So come out and get your blues on, your jazz or your R&B. But we have challenged the stockyards to celebrate Black History Month. And I couldn't have wrote this, but on February the 19th, we'll have the herd walking down the street with the Longhorns. We'll be going to the rodeo at the Coliseum. And if you didn't know this, children are absolutely free on Friday. So I couldn't have invited something better. Then Pam Minnick called and said, Jim, I want to give you 50 tickets to come see Jimmy Allen. Why is this important? He's an African-American country and Western singer. So we will be there. And if you want to join us, let me know. I got 50 tickets and I'll give them to you. And then that's it. I mean, there's other things. You can go to the website. But I'm so excited about this program because we did it once before through Zoom. And you Zoom members will be this is an important program, but we're doing a program why we should have an African American museum. And you have two great speakers today. One of them is my classmate from Howard University, Dr. John Burnett. Dr. Barnett is originally from Fort Worth. Strange story, I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. John's a member of Omega Psi Phi, but his dad was a Kappa, so I don't know how you went wrong, John. Okay. And his dad said, you know Jim Austin? You know, so and he's a founding member of Kappa Alpha Psi. But John Barnett, you know, practiced pediatric dentistry, 1978, moved to New Orleans, and was very involved in the American Dental Association, the National Dental Association, and the Academy of Pediatric Dentistry. But John came back after the Hurricane Katrina, sent him back to his home in Fort Worth. So both his wife and he are dentists, and they both graduated from Howard University. So we're so glad to have him as a member of Fort Worth and very involved in the project of diversity and inclusion in the Fort Worth Rotary. Dr. Jason Shelton, Director of the Center of African American Studies, He's coming to us from Zoom. And he's an associate professor, sociology, director of the Center of African American Studies for the University of Texas of Arlington. His research interests concerns of sociology of religion, as well as intersectional of race, class, attitude about various political and social issues. He's a book writer and just very involved, and I know him personally, and I think he has grown the statistics because this group of about 100 individuals, leaders, are working to see this subject, the importance of having an African-American museum. So I would like to bring you Dr. John Barnett, my friend.
Thank you very much, Jim. It's difficult getting this mask on. So glad to be here this evening. I greet you, the Rotary Club of Fort Worth, in the humanitarian spirit of Rotary's beloved founder, Paul Percy Harris. I stand this afternoon to solicit your support for the establishment of an African American museum and cultural center in Fort Worth. As I contemplated my opportunity this afternoon, I thought about the owner of an old mutt dog who entered him into a prize show. And as he took the stage, no, I didn't think he'd win anything, but I thought the exposure would do him good. And so I stand here before you not thinking that I'm going to be convincing, but that the exposure would do me good. My desire this afternoon is not to talk at you, but to talk to you about the merits of the project that we propose. I must admit, though, that I stand here with some trepidation. For in the process of examining the self-examination of conscience, it's a difficult process marred with defensiveness, with justification, with denial. But my comfort here today is that I derive my ease because I'm speaking to a group of Rotarians and their guests. Rotarians who have already accepted the need and the benefit of self-examination as exhibited by our four-way test. Is it the truth? For some reason, I feel a need to repeat that. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will we build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Surely American exceptionalism could be greatly enhanced if all involved had a dedicated application of our platform for self-examination. Let me then make my case, or attempt to make my case, as to why Fort Worth should embrace, and why this Rotary Club should embrace the support of an African American Museum and Cultural Center in Fort Worth. You know, I can say that without a doubt, systemic racism exists unconsciously or possibly consciously in America. Sometimes it takes the victim of bias or racism to experience it more intently than those who gain privilege from it. I grew up in Fort Worth on the north side, 25th and Clinton, in the stockyard, maybe 2 blocks from what is now Billy Bob's. And I have seen the time in Fort Worth's history where there was no such thing as a mall. Everyone came downtown to shop and to do their bidding. I can remember as a little boy going to Monnings and Striplings and Leonard Brothers, and those of you who are Fort Worth recognize those names. And I would go by the escalators in Leonard Brothers, and when no one was looking, I looked at two water fountains, the white water and the colored water. I remember one day I looked around and nobody was looking, and I tasted the white water. I actually thought in my mind that it tasted better. There was some reason we couldn't drink from that fountain. And I would say to those who drank from the white fountain, there was no obvious offense. But to those who had to suffer the disallowance of privileges that were taken for granted by all, there was a big difference. In dental school, I'm left-handed. And as I had to work on my patients, we would go into these big clinics of 50 chairs of dental equipment. 99% of those chairs were made for right-handed people. My left-handed chair was in the back, at the back, in the dark, in the corner. Now, to the right-handers, everything was fine. But to the left-handers, we resented having to go to the back of the clinic just to do what we should have had the privilege to do. I am not of the opinion that bias or racism is in the domain of any particular ethnic group. My opinion is that bias or racism is a disease of the majority. For I have seen all ethnicities around the world, when they experience the privilege of majority, take advantage of those who are lesser numbered. And to them, it seems fine, but to those who suffer, the consequences are grave. I would make this supposition to you that the founding fathers were aware of the need to address this natural, innate bias or racism found in humanity as a whole. Thomas Jefferson, who was one of our founding fathers, owned slaves. Yet in 1776, he penned the Declaration of Independence, of where I think after a time of self-examination, he said that all men were created equal, having certain inalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Though the societal culture that he lived in did not abide by what he wrote, he stated it in the fact that he knew at some time the need for America to embrace that all men are created equal would be important to bring us through the troubling times of trying to accept who we are, not as a divided nation, but as the United States of America. And unless we embrace that struggle to bring equity to all people, our existence as a republic, as a democracy, will be short-lived. If we're not in the end times as we speak, is it the truth? I found people embracing illusion and delusion over truth. Rotarians have so much to be proud for. I'm so proud to be a Rotarian. My father was a Rotarian. I wondered why, as a little kid, he embraced the Rotary, having been a part and having understand the challenges that we undertake, and the people who are in this room who are an example to all. It becomes clear to me why Rotary is important. There is a favorite West African proverb of mine that says, until the lions get their own historians, the tale will always favor the hunter. Langston Hughes, who was a famous African-American poet, novelist, and socialist, wrote that a dream deferred is a dream denied. A dream deferred is a dream denied. Fort Worth cannot become a change agent for healing the racial divide. Fort Worth has to be a change agent for healing the racial divide. An African-American museum in Fort Worth will be a powerful demonstration of who we are as a city, and a more powerful demonstration of our commitment to the formation of a more perfect union. We must embrace this. Rotary must lead in our embracing this challenge that lies before us. You are the chosen. You are the ones who have been selected. You have already embraced the concept of self-examination, and you reach to it as we embrace each other in this diverse group present here this morning, and I'm sure online. So let me say in closing that your support is needed. Let me say that your support is requested. Let me say that together we can heal the racial divide in Fort Worth. And in doing so, we can contribute to the healing of our nation. It is our call. It is our opportunity. Let us embrace what God has allowed to be placed before us. I thank you. God bless you and keep you is my prayer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Wonderful, wonderful. Dr. Barnett, powerful words, sir. You're a tough act to follow. Appreciate your poignant and powerful statements about the importance of an African-American history museum in the great city of Fort Worth, Texas. I do have to bring a little bit of levity to the moment, though, and say that there's a Kappa at the front of the room and there's an Omega at the front of the room, but there's always a brother of Alpha Phi Alpha somewhere nearby. And here I am, and I know a number of brothers that are also Alphas that are members of Rotary. So it is a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here. I do want to tell you, I'm not a Rotarian, but back in the city of Detroit, I have an uncle who I believe was the president and is very much so active in the Detroit Rotary. His name is Walter Green and his wife is Colleen Green, and they have been around for a long time in that great city. I also want to give a shout out to Fernando Costa. He is the reason why I'm here today. That when the project came about related to the city of Fort Worth and this African American History Museum, somehow, but some way, my name came up as someone to be involved in this project. And ultimately, it was Fernando who gave the go-ahead. And so I'm here today to share some data with you regarding support for this potential new museum or cultural center. And I want to borrow the good doctor's phrase where he mentioned, Dr. Barnett mentioned the word support, and that is key to moving forward. And so I want to share with you some initial results from an early preliminary survey that we put together just a few months ago. So I'm going to share my screen here. Can you all see? Can you all see this Fort Worth Museum survey findings, preliminary results? All right, thank you for letting me know. So the person who really nominated me to Fernando was Mr. Victor Costa, who's the Director of Neighborhood Services in the city of Fort Worth. So I always want to give him a big thank you and shout out as well. But let's jump right to it, ladies and gentlemen. Our survey had a number of important points and questions, and I'll get to that in just a hot second, but let me take a quick step back. Let me tell you about the characteristics of the sample. Who are the people that we spoke with? And so it's just a small sample, 90 people. Again, this is just preliminary, getting on our feet early going. The sample breaks down. It is mostly African-American, as you can see, 56% Black, 33% white, Latinos, 8%, others, that includes a few Asians, a few Arab Americans. I want you to know the results I'm going to show you do not account for those groups, only because as a survey researcher, you know, a small sample size, a handful of individuals do not speak for a group. And so we've got to have reliable data. So I decided to drop them out for this portion of the analysis. As we get more Asians, Latinos, Arab Americans, and other racial and ethnic groups, we will most certainly include them in the data file. The sample is slightly more female than male. But look on the other side when I get to age. That's a key point over here. As you can see, 80% of the folk in our survey so far are at 51 and up. Only 20% are in that 18 to 50 demographic. And that is something we are working on right now. Actually, the survey is back out in the field, particularly trying to get more data from younger people, because they are a key part of telling this story of level of support. And you'll see why in a few minutes. And last but not least is down in that corner, museum attendance. As you'll notice, about 80% of the people who are part of this survey are essentially museum people. They are folk that are at the museum at least several times a year. And as you can see, about 30% of them are there at least once a month. So this survey so far skews towards people who are museum folks, who are a little bit older. So, you know, we need a little bit more from more common everyday people and a broader range of age and racial and ethnic background. I just want to give you that as a quick preliminary. So let's dive in now. The most important question on the survey is, would the development of a new museum, cultural center, or similar institution be an appropriate way to preserve African-American heritage in Fort Worth? And as you see that pie, that big orange slice of the pie tells us that 94% of the folk that we surveyed have said yes, that the development of a new museum here in the city is an important thing. So there's your basic level of support, at least early going. I don't believe it's going to change dramatically. But there's a strong will at this time for this new museum or cultural center. And I say that for a reason. So let's move to the next slide. Do you prefer a new African-American museum or cultural center? And of course, this is a pretty important distinction, right? A museum, in the minds of a great number of people, is sort of a place where you go to see artifacts and relics and things of the past. A cultural center can include those things, but it also can have something more broad. A cultural center, and we'll get a little bit more into this, but think of a cultural center as something that accounts for yesterday, but also today, accounts for the future. It does more than has lectures and things of that nature. And as you see here, with that gray area, 75% of the people that we surveyed said they support a combination of the museum and a cultural center. So not either or, but both and is a critical level of support here in terms of gauging the level of interest. Now let's go a little bit deeper, y'all. One of the questions on our survey was, what are the features of this new institution, whether it's a museum or a cultural center? We asked the respondents to rank their top 5 things that they found most important. As you look here at the slide, I'm only giving you the first 2, right, just to save time. And you'll also notice a number of blank spaces. I didn't put the data on the slide if it was approximately less than 15%. So I want you to not get lost in numbers. I want you to see the big picture of what people are actually thinking. And so as you see here, of the African Americans in the survey and of the whites in the survey, they are on the same page, ladies and gentlemen, that the most important feature of this new institution is high quality exhibits. 72% of Black folks, 80% of white folks are saying that. The second most, not second, but what would come second in terms of the most important is, again, around 20% of Blacks and whites said a sense of community is key here. And that's a little bit nebulous, I get it. What does that mean, Jason? Essentially, what these folks are tapping into is the notion of a place that is a sense of commonality, a sense of identity. They relate in some kind of way to the things that happen in this new institution. So I think it's pretty telling that both Blacks and whites are similar in their levels in their percent distributions on what they feel is most important. What they feel is second most important, the Black folks are a lot more divided, as you see here, 20, 22%, 24%. White folks are a little bit more, of course, not a majority, but a sharper number here at 36%, saying sense of community. So I think it's pretty clear what is most important here is that those quality exhibits, also that sense of community. And there are some other things that we need to account for in the process of hopefully building this new institution here in the city. I'm not going to go for much longer. I know we want to give a few questions, but one of the things I do want to get to is the location of this new institution. And this is very important, ladies and gentlemen. As you can imagine, A whole lot of changes have happened as a result of COVID. We're meeting online. Some of us are face-to-face at UT Arlington. The vast majority of our classes are virtual these days. It's hurting so much of our sense of community as a nation, as a city, as a campus, all of these things. And so location is key for all of these things as well, and getting back to this sense of what we're going to have. So what's most important of the location of the new institution? The African-American sample, ladies and gentlemen, is very closely divided on this. 28% of the sample say that it should be in an African-American neighborhood. What comes to mind for me is Stop 6, right? That classic Black neighborhood. But 33% of African-Americans say it should be near other attractions, maybe the museum district. That's a place where my wife and I take our kids all the time. A great number of people would probably want to go to the new Black institution, and let's go to the Science Museum, and let's go to some of the other things that are around, the Modern Art Museum, all those things that are in that area. The white population in the sample, very much so, strong majority here, near other attractions. The point I want to make here is that this is a pretty strong debate, particularly among the African Americans in the sample. Where should this be? Is going to be a tough question to answer. Another thing that's clearly important here is should it be near transit? A number of African Americans say that, related to what is second most important. Whites also feel that way as well. So again, there's some moving parts that have yet to be figured out. And I think all of that will play a role in terms of level of support in the community. There's more I could say, but I won't for the sake of time. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, ladies and gentlemen. And I know there's not much time left, but if there is anybody who wanted a question for myself or Dr. Barnett, please feel free to fire away.
Thank you, Dr. Shelton. We have just a few minutes for questions. If you have a question, feel free to raise your hands, and Tom will come to you with the microphone so everyone on Zoom land can hear. Any questions for anyone in the room? I'm sure that was such a thought-provoking, poignant tribute by Dr. Barnett, and very interesting on the survey results from Dr. Shelton. Looks like we have a question from Dr. Joe Michaels.
What are we thinking about in terms of size and money? Is it a $100 million project, a $500 million project, 5,000 feet, 50,000 feet?
I think the best person to answer that question is a member of your Rotary Club, Mr. Fernando Costa.
We don't know yet.
Fernando, go ahead.
But we'll be studying that question during this year, and we'll have a good answer. The best guess is we're talking about something in the ballpark of $20 million, but we have much more work to do.
Great. Another question? I think I saw a hand. Back there. All right. Mr. Brandon Gengelbach. And we'll make this the last question.
Thanks. I'd just love to hear from an African-American standpoint what this means for you and what this means for diversity and equity. Being a white guy, I'm just so ignorant and want to be able to help in any way I can. And so I look at this and I just would love to understand more. Is it a historical piece to understand the challenges and issues? Is it a celebration piece? What's at the root of what this brings to the African-American community? I know it's a deep question. And then how is the white guy can contribute and honor that? Is that too heavy right before we're supposed to go?
It's a great question. Anybody like to be brave enough to answer?
I'd love to answer, but I'm going to let Dr. Barnett, since he's a member of the Rotary Club, to take the first answer at this, sir.
All right. We got you.
I think that the African-American story is the story of America from the eyes or through the eyes of an African-American. And as you bring awareness and you bring consciousness to a situation, it helps all of us to bond together. I think that whites should take just as much pride in understanding someone that they had no ability to relate to because the distinctions are so glaring, our cultures, what we like. And so I think that the to bring African Americans into acceptance where we are not experiencing systemic racism and systemic bias brings all of us up. It enriches all of us. We contribute in a different manner. There may not be that level of fear if you understand your neighbor. Light always brings darkness into vision. And right now, there is not a lot of light shining as far as acceptance. That old proverb, until we have our historian, the favor of the hunt is always going to go to the majority. And the assumption will always be that of the majority. When if we just get to know each other, and that's why Rotary should lead this, because we are setting the example for what can happen when we get beyond in our self-examination through our four-way test. So this is an opportunity for others to see us and for us to see others and to join us, this great experiment of American democracy, in what our founding fathers saw it to be. And they are speaking to us through the documents that we are not adhering to. We've gone into a fantasy world of them and us, and we're not going to survive. We're not a blue states, we're not red states, we're the United States. Neither side can survive without the other. This is about the survival of our nation, that we come together and work through the differences and accommodate the richness of the diversity that is so much our calling card as the United States of America. I could say more, but I know time doesn't allow, and hopefully that gives some insight into what this would mean, not just to African Americans, but to the Fort Worth community as a whole, to be a shining light for the nation as to how it can be done. And I think Fort Worth is the ideal city to make that happen. We already lead. Let us not sway in our leadership position that we've always taken.
That was beautifully put, Dr. Barnett. Dr. Shelton, we have about 1 minute if you'd like to give us some final thoughts.
All I was going to say was that I completely concur with what Dr. Barnett said about the story of African-American history is American history. And I think too often people get lost in those politics and thinking of identity and pulling this people that way or this way. Let's tell this richness of this story, of an American story of, as Grandma would say, how far we've come, but how far we have yet to go. Let me also emphasize that as a father to two young, beautiful girls, there's a lot of research, ladies and gentlemen, and you all know this, that young Americans, regardless of race, know very little of American history. They know some big ideas and some big names, but they don't know important things that might have happened in their local communities. And of course, the broader story, whether we're talking about African Americans or Italian Americans or whatever the ethnic or racial group you want to talk about is. So museums like this are, to directly get to Brandon's question, this would be a celebration. This would be a recognition of history. I think a cultural center is important because when we know more about potentially the music that could be played, the jazz, bringing in speakers, bringing in so much more that can happen, that's not just the celebration of African-American life and history, but understanding what the American story is today, tomorrow, and where we are going for the future.
Dr. Barnett, Dr. Shelton, I must say on a personal note, this has been one of the most enriching conversations I've ever been a part of, especially here at the Rotary Club. It is a tradition of the Fort Worth Public Library or the Rotary Club to give a copy of the bookplate that we will donate in honor of your talk and your talk, Dr. Shelton, to the Fort Worth Public Library. I have a copy of the bookplate we will give you. And folks, one more time for Dr. Barnett and Dr. Shelton, a round of applause. We'll save the announcements for later. I'll email them out. I'd like to close the meeting today, though, in honor of a very, very wise woman who said, "Hear me, please. If we can be taught to hate, we can be taught to love, and it is our responsibility." Those words were said today, February 5th, 2021, by our living legend, Miss Opalee. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.